the PowerLeader podcast, where the future of leadership is rewritten at the intersection of technology, human psychology, and business. Here, we ask the real questions. Where is the integrity in decision making? Where is the humanity in how we lead? This is the PowerLeader podcast, where leadership is not about the title you hold today, but the impact you leave for tomorrow. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the PowerLeader podcast. Today's guest is a leader whose career spans nearly 4 decades at the highest level of technology, cybersecurity, and executive education. Christopher Kowalsky is not just a CIO. He is a builder of systems, a mentor of leaders, and a strategist who has shaped the future of IT across healthcare, education, and mission-critical environments. With 38 years of IT implementation and leadership experience, including 33 years as a CIO for organization ranging from major health system to national education networks, Chris has led transformation where reliability, security, and human impact are non-negotiable. His work has touched hospitals, universities, nonprofits, and enterprise-scale operations, always with the same commitment to elevate people, strengthen systems, and deliver outcomes that matter. For more than 34 years, he has also served as a professor at Carnegie Mellon University, guiding executive, graduate, and undergraduate students in IT management and cybersecurity. His influence extends far beyond the classroom. He has mentored the next generation of CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders who now shape industries around the world. Chris is a CIO Visionary of the Year, a Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, and a trusted advisor to leaders seeking clarity, strategy, and wisdom in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. He brings a rare combination of operational excellence, human-centered leadership, and system-level thinking. And today, he joins us to share the lessons, stories, and insight earned from a lifetime of leading technology where it matters most. It is an honor to welcome Christopher Kowalsky to the PowerLeader podcast. Thank you for being here. I am grateful for the opportunity to sit with you today and engage in a conversation that I know will bring wisdom to our audience.
Well, thank you, Dia. Really appreciate the introduction. That was very nice of you to go back and cover all the aspects of my life, my career. I appreciate that very much. Going back in time, certainly we met as you were furthering your education at Carnegie Mellon University, and as one of our star students. It certainly is a pleasure to be back with you on this podcast. I'm looking forward to it, Dia. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. Chris, based on your wide experiences and leadership across healthcare, education, and executive coaching, when you look back, what core leadership philosophy has remained constant throughout your career?
Sure. So looking back, what some most important elements, I think, looking back and also being current, and it has to do with integrity, understanding what the right things to do are, and working through processes to make sure that they are being done correctly with people, and listening to people also was another big factor that I learned. I learned not the day one, but as I continued to learn the importance of listening and the importance of doing what it was that I was asked to do and do what I said I would do. One of the biggest compliments I ever received from a CEO when I was leaving to go to another opportunity was, Chris, he said, the one thing that's different about you as a CIO than some of the others I've been around is that you actually do what you say you're going to do. And I think that gets down to integrity, and it gets down to listening. What is it that needs to get done, for whom, at all levels of the organization.
Very nice. I love how that philosophy has stayed with you and the integrity part of it. It explains a lot about how you have led through so many shifts in the industry. After 33 years as a CIO, what do you think executives still misunderstand about the CIO-CISO role today?
Yeah, so sometimes a lot of misunderstandings about the relationship between a chief information officer or a chief information digital officer and chief information security officers, meaning that they think of that as an adversarial or not a non-supportive relationship, which I don't think is true. Many of my peer CIOs certainly understand the importance of protecting the assets of the organization, and more clearly, the importance of hiring someone in a chief information security officer position that is certainly well schooled and well experienced in knowing what to do. CIOs aren't necessarily a deep dive into all things cybersecurity. Rely heavily on the experienced, well certified, well educated, well experienced chief information security officers. So that relationship has to be strong, it has to be synergistic, it has to be something that is built over time. I don't know about all organizations, but I could tell you that the CISOs that reported to me, a couple of them are still my best friends, so really, really good friends with me. And so I think that's a tribute to them understanding where I could be of assistance to them and where I understood the importance to my responsibilities. So cultivating that relationship is key and critical. When it doesn't happen, the organization is at risk, and that's not good for anyone or any company.
The clarity reveals how far the CIO and CISO role has come and how much further it is destined to go. It sets the stage for a larger question about the evolution of the field itself. How has the definition of technology leadership changed from when you began to where we are now?
So I don't know that it has changed.
Okay,
Technology, as you went through my profile a few decades ago, right?
sure.
What my responsibilities were whenever I took on that area of responsibility to be able to identify and to implement and support technology for the organization, for the betterment of the customers of the organization, for the mission of the organization. So it was always about strategy, it was always about implementation, it was always about getting it right and hiring the best people and the right people to be able to understand how to do that. But also key and critical, technology leadership is not just the technical people. Obviously, it has to do with the organization itself. So being able to communicate in business terms, but be able to understand what's necessary to accomplish the goals and the objectives, the business objectives of the organization. That's key and critical. So technology leadership, I don't believe has over the decades changed. I think now could say that it's the same, but maybe squared from the standpoint of artificial intelligence. So from that viewpoint, there's more of it, more impact to be gained, but there's certainly that same area of responsibility. What's the strategy? What do we do to make sure that the experiences, the internal and external customers are being taken care of? Is it the right technology for the organization? And how do we continue to make improvements in that as we continue?
You mentioned about the changes in technology such as AI, maybe let's call it evolution of. So technology leadership opens the door to understanding how you have applied that philosophy in some of the most demanding settings, since you have led IT transformation in hospitals, universities, and nonprofit organizations. What principles guide you when building systems that must be resilient, compliant, and mission critical?
So we have to understand that what you just said was about change. Change affects the culture. It affects the people that are within that culture and how we move change through that culture. The key there is through transformation is to be able to understand the culture, how we work within it, how we get those that are in that culture to be able to support and be a part of change and to move that forward. So without understanding change, without understanding the culture that currently exists and the opportunities to change that culture, if it is possible, sometimes change will just make that happen quickly, and then people aren't necessarily always happy with that. But the best possible case would be that we get people involved, understand why change is occurring, have an open ear towards how we believe that they can help us to more smoothly be able to create change, and then therefore the culture will change as well. So transformation is all about changing culture.
That is an amazing way to look at it. As we all know, leaders should be the first ambassador for culture, and that shift in definition has reshaped expectations for leaders at every level, especially when the stakes are high. Building on that, what do you think leaders often overlook when implementing large-scale IT or cybersecurity initiatives?
Everybody is responsible for security. It's not just the technical people sitting in a corner somewhere. It's not just somebody that's waving a flag saying we have a potential out there of a breach. Everybody has to understand the risks of the organization. The more assets, technical assets that we acquire, the more data that we are responsible for, the highest risks that emerge, and we have to take a look at that. But it isn't just the technical people; it's the executives, it's the boards, everybody that is involved in the maintaining and securing the assets of the organization. So I think that's the biggest piece right there. Everybody is involved. Everybody should contribute. Everybody should understand and be educated on what security is. So again, it's not just a technical person's responsibility. It's basically everybody in the organization, especially leadership. Leadership has to take that role.
With the decades of experience teaching cybersecurity at Carnegie Mellon, what you believe executives still misunderstand about cybersecurity as an enterprise-wide responsibility?
Well, yeah, and it goes back to what I was saying before, and that is that, it's about enterprise risk. It's about everyone needs to be involved. So we talk about the technology that can protect our organization, but more importantly, we need to do risk analysis to understand where those vulnerabilities might be. What assets do we need to protect? Do we even know the assets? How do we collect that information? What's our regulatory requirements? Do we have a compliance function in our organization? Is there an enterprise risk management? Is there governance for enterprise risk management and cybersecurity management? All of those component parts need to come together in order for the organization wide, as you say, to have a secure environment.
Chris, you mentioned about the regulatory governance part of it. With that in mind, how should boards and CEOs rethink their role in cyber risk governance?
Education, right? So, many board members or business leaders that may have gone to school, probably did go to school, advanced degrees, whatever, decades ago. So a lot of this nuanced technology and the vulnerabilities and the breaches that occur are way out of their comfort level in terms of understanding. Becoming educated through whatever resources that are available. And by the way, at Carnegie Mellon, I believe it just started a new program for board of directors that will be educated in the fundamentals of what could go wrong and how do I protect it, who will protect it, and things of that nature. That's number one, getting education. Number two, it's basically a matter of figuring out, keeping a track of what kind of breaches and threats that are going on in the organization that has to be communicated to the board, meaning that the board has to be able to get educated through people like myself coming in or consultants coming in to talk about the latest and greatest breaches. And number three, maybe I would say that having a mentor, having someone that can advise the board members individually offline, because not everybody wants to be schooled online sometimes, don't have the time or the effort or even the willingness to do that. But, something like that could help. And also putting a CISO on the board, depending on how the size of your organization. It could be a full board member, or it could be a divided guest occasionally or whatever, as an adjunct board member. All of the above, I think, it needs to be put together and considered. But the boards definitely are not off the hook. Definitely they have responsibility to protect the assets of the organization. Obviously it goes down to the C-suite, the executive leadership, to execute it, to manage. They have to be able to not only do the right things, but also come up and communicate to the board as well.
Awesome. That's a lot of important points, Chris. You have taught executives, graduates, and undergraduate students, and you are also a mentor for over 34 years. What leadership gaps do you see most often in emerging IT and cybersecurity professionals?
When we're clear on that, leadership jobs, would it be more specific on what your question was on that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure things. For example, I would say there are leaders in cybersecurity, in IT, who comes just from the MBA background or just from completely IT background. So are there any gaps that you see, and what are they?
If I understand your question properly, do you mean what types of experiences and various job positions there might be that would help get them the experience necessary in order to be into a higher position, a CISO type position, or something else?
Yeah. For example, I am coming from business and technology background. I have run my own organization and I am a computer application graduate, and I always self-educate myself about technology and business. What I have been seeing in the industry, sometimes higher level cybersecurity leaders come from just the business background. So they do not understand how to connect the points, or sometimes they come from completely technical background where they don't understand the return of investment or revenue or things like that. So for me, I consider myself as a, good candidate because I have technical knowledge and I also have business knowledge. I can talk to the CEOs and board members in a way that they understand. And at the same time, I can talk to my engineers in a way they understand. If somebody has to get to an higher level designation in cybersecurity, such as CISO or Vice President of Security, there are any gaps,
So I understand now where you're coming from on that. So let me just talk about all technology leadership positions, including the CISO position, right? The senior leadership positions in information technology management basically are business positions. we need to understand how the business works. We need to understand how to communicate to the business. We need to be able to understand technology, but communicate it in a way that non-technical leadership management could understand. So all of that combined basically requires people in senior technology positions, CISO, CIO, senior vice presidents, whatever, of technology infrastructure, what you name it, the multitude base management, whatever you want to talk about. Basically, you have to be able to communicate, and basically you have to understand how business operates. So with that in mind, you might have come up at an undergraduate degree in computer science or information systems or things of that nature. But I always recommend, and I've pretty much aligned what you just said, that there would be at least a business minor in that as they come along. So when they do step into the job, they're doing technology work, they can also understand how business works. But more importantly, and I had found this out myself, that once you start to get into a senior leadership role, that there's so much more about how business runs, whether it be in the finance area or the procurement area or the operations area, and marketing area, that it almost requires you to get an MBA or something like that, right? So most people that I know, most of the people that have my position do have that business degree background and have gone to getting a master's degree along with potentially. Some people have gotten a master's degree in information systems, but then they find out that they need to get another master's degree in business, or they might have come from a business background in undergrad and wanted to get a master's degree in information systems. So they have the point you made it earlier, and that is that they have to be able to communicate business terms and understand the business and be able to take technology, understand what the right technology is for the right time and the right place to meet the business needs, the business objectives.
Thank you so much, Chris. I want to share one of my experience with you. I have seen hiring people just out from the university and giving them a title of cybersecurity manager. I don't feel like age is a showstopper for anything, but I felt like you need to have some kind of business experience and some kind of technical experience, hands-on experience to be in a management position. Because when you are in a management position, there are many employees who rely on you to get guidance, and also you are going to review their work. If you are not well aware of how it looks like in a bigger way, understanding of how the business work, how the technology work, how the employment work, how the review process work, you are making a mistake. So I felt that was a hiring mistake. So I want to ask you, what are some of the hiring mistakes leaders make when they build their security management team based on your perspective?
Well, yeah, you covered a lot of ground there with your experience. So yeah, hiring the right person is key and critical. There's no doubt about that. And understanding what it is that is necessary to do the job. You also mentioned about managerial training and education knowledge, right? And how to communicate with people, how to assess people, how to mentor people. That's a skill. It's not something that everybody just gets because they understand how to go through cybersecurity logs, right? So if you're really good about cybersecurity technology, you know, Splunk or what have you, just because you're really good at that doesn't mean that when you are over top other people, are responsible for people and their progress and their productivity, that you know how to do that. So managerial training is key and critical. How to know whether you have high performers or mid performers or low performers, and you know how to deal with low performers and how to either stay with them or give a plan to leave, so to speak, and things of that nature. So that would be key and critical. So hiring mistakes can come in at obviously not understanding the requirements of the job and the people that would be able to fit well within that job. Now, it could be a job that requires a 10-hour day, or it could be a job that requires weekend time and things of that nature. All those aspects have to be handled. It might require technology that they had not been certified in or had experience with, and what is their capability of being able to do that, but to be able to pick that up and have new learning experiences in that regard as well. So with that in mind, you know, looking at as well as you can the person's capability. If they have no certifications, and you know they're going to need certifications in some of the technology that you have, that's going to be something that you have to think about as well. But again, you know, understanding what the position entails, what the kind of personality, or is it going to require a lot of communication, a lot of teamwork? What's the person's area of experience in that, working with team? Has the person ever done any type of supervisory work? If you're looking at the BO type of people, you know, do they understand emotional intelligence?
Yes.
A really big thing today that, you know, in fact, it's not today, it's 20, 30 years ago. I put most of my key IT staff through emotional intelligence training because working with a lot of different individuals in the organization, it's very important that they would understand how people were feeling about how they communicate and what their needs are. So These are the kind of things that I think that have to be considered. Making a bad hiring decision is definitely on the manager doing it. It's nothing more important than in making the right hire. That's the key number one responsibility of a manager is to get it right, to make the best hire, the right hire, and make sure that once that person is in the organization, that that person can be adequately mentored and trained. And progress can happen, promotions can happen, good feedback can happen over time, and it's a team player.
Thank you so much. I want to ask, imagine that you hired a right candidate, but due to your lack of understanding of how to mentor them, how to guide them, you are not utilizing their, fullest potential. How could it impact the organization in the long run?
Well, yeah, you have to you have to stop and say, why is that happening? Why I'm not using somebody that has lots of potential and lots of abilities that aren't being used for the betterment of the organization? It could be that there's not an opportunity for that to be. In other words, you can't just make up a project, can't just make up a thing for them to work on. So from that standpoint, or they may be the wrong person for the wrong position. I mean, maybe they shouldn't be there. They should be somewhere else in the organization. And that's something that you have to look at as well. That person will get disgruntled. That person, knows that they can do things that others might be doing, but then again, there isn't the opportunity to put that person there. On the other hand, the manager may or may not understand and know how much talent the person has that's not being used, and that would be on the manager itself. So again, we're back to managerial competency, understand the right person, what their skills are, how they could use it. But how do you get to that answer? You probably have to be able to have good, constant dialogue, discussions with the individual and on the team, with the individuals on the team, and having that honest relationship, which comes from, we need you to do this, and you're saying, well, I can do this, but I can also do these other things as well. And with that, can you please put me into those things? And then, obviously we try to come up with a plan to see if we can work that out over time, as opposed to ignoring it.
That leads to another question, Chris. What if the manager is not ready for a difficult conversation or not ready for a honest conversation? You just mentioned have honest conversations, but there are leaders or bosses who doesn't want to have honest conversations because, for whatever the reason, maybe insecure leader.
Yeah, I think that's where we need to get to a point where we're training our managerial people correctly. There's books to be read on this, crucial conversations, coffee cup conversations, things that, that are hard to do, but you have to have some ability to understand the right way to do it. And sometimes we just don't know that waking up in the morning. We have to learn how to do that. We have to be mentored on how to do that. We have to read other expertise that have experience in doing this. So again, we're into managerial training when you talk about that. Managers are not only number one responsibility is to hire the right person, but also to keep the right person and make that person as productive as possible through whatever means possible. So if people are not productive, they're not having opportunities to be productive. Disgruntled could be on obviously a staff viewpoint, it could be on a managerial standpoint, but they got to come together and do it. But if you're afraid to make that discussion, if you're afraid to have that discussion, you shouldn't be a manager. You should go to your manager and say, look, I have these needs to do, but I just don't know if I can handle it properly. I mean, we may lose a good A performer, a high performer. And if I don't do this right, that person might be out the door. Could you help me, give me some technique, some methodology, some practice on how to do this? Just don't throw me into managing people if I don't have the tools to do that, because it's not fair to me, not fair to this organization. And if it's on me, give me the time to go out and learn how to do this.
In our next episode, we will explore what happens when leadership fails to honor innovation within its own ranks. We will talk about the uncomfortable truth when managers take credit for their team's ideas, when honest feedback is punished instead of valued, and when emotional intelligence becomes the missing link in leadership culture. You will hear how ethical leadership, open communication, and integrity shape not just performance, but people's lives. Join us as we unpack the psychology, ethics, and culture behind leadership that truly listens. This is the Power Leader podcast. Signing off, Dia.